Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 6th of October Dorset Council Cabinet. We've got a busy agenda today, so without further ado, I'm going to go in a quick roll call. All the Cabinet are present today. Peter Wharf, who's the Vice Chairman, Ray Bryan, Graham Carr-Jones, Tony Ferrari, Jill Haynes, Laura Miller, Andrew Parry, Gary Suttle and David Walsh. And when they deliver any of the reports, I'll ask them just to say who they are and what their portfolio is. Officers today: Matt Prosser, Chief Exec; Aidan Dunn, Executive Director; 151 Officer; John Selgren, Director for Place; Teresa Levy, Executive Director of Children; Vivian Broadhurst, Executive Director of Adults; Jonathan Mayer, Corporate Director and Monitoring Officer; David McIntosh, Corporate Director, HR and OD; and Kate Critchell, Senior Democratic Services Officer. And in the background, as our producer today, is Denise Hunt. Apologies, Kate, I don't think we've got any, have we?
No, Chairman, we have no apologies, but just to let you know that Stuart Riddle is here on behalf of Teresa Levy. She's not attending today.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that clarification. Minutes of the last meeting, everyone. Can I sign those when I'm able to? Are you all content that they're a true record?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Anybody got any declarations they wish to announce? I'll take silence as no. Public participation. We do have 16 questions today. The Constitution allows 30 minutes, but they are important questions. And as I see fit, I'll allow a little bit of flexibility to ensure that we do get through them all. And in any case, the full preamble and the questions and the answers will be available on the website beyond the meeting. So can I ask the first, either Matt Prosser or Jonathan Mayer, going to read the questions, and the first one is Katrina Ross.
Thank you indeed, Leader. So Matt Prosser, Chief Executive. Question from Catriona Ross, I think it is.
Sorry, yeah, Catriona Ross.
Thank you. What are Dorset Council doing to encourage less car use around the main towns? The Safe Street Maps was very helpful to let the public identify issues, but I've not seen any updates or signs of change around Bridport. In the last few weeks, 2 cyclists have been injured after being hit by vehicle drivers in Bridport. Vehicle use is to be reduced to combat climate change, but the only way to do that is to make people feel safe cycling or walking. Why can't all town centre speed limits be reduced from 30 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour? A simple and cheap way to make roads safer. And I believe Councillor Ray Bryan will answer this question.
Thank you. And Catriona, thank you for the question. My name is Councillor Ray Bryan. I'm the portfolio holder for Highways, Travel and Environment, and I lead the EAP on climate change. The thousands of individuals' contributions to the Dorset Safe Streets website have been useful in helping Dorset Council to understand residents' concerns and to identify potential schemes to support walking and cycling. Not all of the ideas submitted will be able to be funded in the short term, and many will be impossible to deliver due to other constraints. But in some cases, these will help inform future funding bids and longer term strategies. Dorset Council is working with Bridport Town Council to identify priority schemes to improve conditions for people walking and cycling in the town. There have been substantial recent investment in provision for people on foot and bike in the town, including access to West Bay from the East Road roundabout. Any changes to speed limits requires careful consideration of Department for Transport guidance. Changing a speed limit is not a simple or cheap process, although I do appreciate why it may be seen that way. There are unseen costs associated with speed limit setting. A lengthy and costly legal process is required for speed limits to be changed, and costs associated with signing for speed limits is often not insignificant, particularly if considering area-wide schemes in town and villages across Dorset. I'm aware of growing number of requests for 20-mile-per-hour speed limit zones across Dorset and indeed nationally. Department for Transport guidance encourages local highway authorities to install more 20-mile-per-hour speed limit and zones. There is evidence that 20-mile-per-hour speed limits can help encourage active travel in urban communities and in turn improve emissions. However, it is recognised that a reduced limit of 20 miles per hour may not be appropriate in all locations requested. Colleagues in highways are carefully considering what could be feasible whilst being mindful of Department for Transport criteria for 20 mile an hour speed limits and zones. Any decision will be evidence-led. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. The second question is from Kaz Dennett.
Good morning, Chairman. Jonathan Mayer, Corporate Director for Legal and Democratic. Two questions from Kaz Dennett. What evidence does Dorset Council have to state publicly that the air quality in Weymouth Bay is unchanged by the presence of cruise ships between March and September 2020, and that residents are unfounded in their concerns over cruise ship emissions? And then her second question, assuming that the unnamed Dorset Council spokesperson is correct, and the smog in the bay is caused by temperature inversions, trapping air pollution from vehicles, fires and industrial activity, and not from cruise ship emissions, what measures are Dorset Council taking to reduce the acknowledged air pollution in Weymouth? And I understand this question will be answered by Councillor Ray Bryan.
No, actually, it's me. So, Chairman, it's Councillor Jill Haynes. I have the portfolio for communities and customer care. So I should be taking this as environmental health is in my portfolio.
Okay, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. I'm actually going to give you an answer to both questions in one answer, but fuller answers will be provided for you after this meeting. Thank you for the questions. There are international conventions in place to help prevention of pollution of the marine environment by ships during their operation. These set limits on certain emissions from ships' exhausts and provide mandatory measures for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. The Council monitors air quality in accordance with the government requirements and works with a variety of agencies to protect and improve air quality in Dorset. Nitrogen dioxide is monitored at congested or heavily trafficked locations throughout the area, and currently there is only one area at Chiddock where air quality objectives are not being met. Overall, monitoring demonstrates that Dorset has very good air quality. The only anomaly identified since the ships commenced their layup in Weymouth Bay was a significant reduction in levels of nitrogen oxide, largely due to reduced traffic. During March and April, DEFRA reported moderate to high pollution across most of the southwest of England, and that included the rural areas. The cause has been attributed to dust and other particulates from continental Europe carried over by prevailing winds and then lingering in the calm conditions. The same conditions also limit the dispersal of local emissions, most notably particulates. And as I've said, there are further information in the responses that will be sent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. The next question is Cleo Evans.
Thank you, Leader. So I'll not read all of the preamble that's going to be published just to make some sense of it, but it's just about when presented with statistics and facts, it's sometimes too overwhelming to get one's head around. So it's important to focus on how to get people to engage with aspects of climate change which can in turn help behaviour. There's a suggestion of a county-wide rolling arts programme of site-specific work that engages people in different ways. For the whole programme and to make an impact, we'll be looking for work with a wow factor, and we don't want to reach out to people already concerned about climate change. We want to work directly with communities and reach people who aren't yet thinking about it. Please can you ask councillors what the council can do to achieve this with us, the Arts Development Company, and what timeline are we looking at? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Exec. Response?
Yes, it's Councillor Ray Bryan. Following approval of the Strategy and Action Plan by the Council, there are a number of actions to be delivered in order to raise awareness within the Dorset area. The Council will have a number of options on how to deliver these actions, and will look to work in partnership with all other organisations where appropriate. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. Next question, Julie Ann Booker for Extinction Rebellion.
This is a question from Julie Ann Booker on behalf of Extinction Rebellion about the Climate and Ecological Emergency Strategy Delivery Plan. And her question is, when exactly will the metrics and the measures be published and available so that they can be included in the communications plan for the public consultation?
Thank you, Jonathan. Ray?
Yes, thank you, Leader. The Appendix B that has been attached to the Cabinet report is only an example of what will be published as part of the public consultation. The full consultation document that will be published will include a key interpreting the infographics and providing metrics and ranges. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. David Warren.
Thank you, Leader. So a question from David Warren. It appears that one of the indirect actions listed in the published version of the Climate Emergency Strategy paper has not been included in the action log that we presented to the public. Energy from waste activities are notoriously CO2 intensive. Please could someone outline why this item has not been included in the action log, as the public should be given the opportunity to discuss this subject? That's question number 1. There is also a second question. It appears that representatives from within the Council have for several months been evaluating the monetary value of offsetting energy from waste CO2 emission levels with a potential developer that are so significant that the developer may have to pay £100,000 per annum to atone for their carbon sins. This information was disclosed to Stephen McNabb, a Director of Powerfield Portland. Perhaps it's time to stop filibustering and clearly document the Council's position on the environmental impact of energy from waste activities in the climate emergency document. The public deserves to be properly informed. I think the question is, how can we better be informed?
Thank you, Chief Exec. Ray Bryan.
Yes, thank you, Leader. The response to question 1 is decisions regarding the Council's preferred method of waste disposal are dealt with by the Joint Municipal Waste Strategy and not the draft Climate Emergency Strategy. An electronic link will be included in the draft climate strategy to make this clear. The Joint Municipal Waste Strategy is due to be reviewed in 2022. I'll go on to question 2. The Council's waste disposal strategy is the Joint Municipal Waste Strategy and not the draft Climate Emergency Strategy, and a link has been included in the draft climate strategy to ensure that this is made clear and all facts are available. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. Next question is from Jane Furriman.
Yes, Chairman, this is a question from Jane Furman about the dog consultation. As there are many dog owners and representatives already willing and actively working with the authorities and groups on issues affecting the public where dogs are a concern, will the Dog Warden Department and Dorset Council take this into account in their decision and in future include, advise and consult where appropriate to promote a good working relationship to the benefit of the general population?
Thank you, Jonathan. Jill?
Thank you, Chairman. I have a whole series of questions on a similar line, so I was going to ask Jonathan Mayer to take all of the dog-related order questions at once, and I will answer in one answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jill. Jonathan, back to you.
Leader, Jonathan and I are going to tic-tac so we didn't lose.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
There are a number of questions, as has been
Yes.
stated. I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions on the dogs. So Jonathan and I will read all of the questions and then hand back to the Councillor.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So this is the question, is question 7 from Linda Stevenson, and the question is, I'll just find the question. Does Dorset Council have updated figures for dog fouling and fines issued, and will they be employing dog wardens to enforce this and work with local groups of dog owners who are trying their best to raise awareness in all areas? And for those viewing the screen, it does actually show the those statistics there for the Weymouth and Portland Borough area.
Thank you very much, Chief Exec. Dog Friendly Weymouth and Portland Group, Jonathan.
Chairman, this question then, will the council respect the consultation results and allow dogs off leads outside the restricted times, and will the council undertake to provide a wider range of time and date options on any future consultation?
Thank you, Jonathan. Paul's on plastic and rubbish Lyme Regis beaches.
And also Lyme Regis's Loving Dog Owners and Friends group is question 9 there. Oh. So there are 2 questions from this group, and there is a lot of preamble, but the final part of the question, therefore, without solid evidence that the Lyme Regis beaches are covered in dog poo, could we please request that this unsupported statement is removed from the consultation? And then it gives some reference documentations. And then question 2 is, as representative of the Facebook group Pause on Plastic and Rubbish Lyme Regis Beaches and Lyme Regis's Loving Dog Owners and Friends, we would also like to ask how many fines were issued for dog fouling on Lyme Regis Front Beach for the period 1st of October 2019 to the 30th of April 2020.
Thank you very much, Chief Exec. Debbie Conabeer. Jonathan.
Chairman, 2 questions from Debbie Conabeer. The first one, why is consideration being given to not allowing dogs off leads on the Lyme Regis Front Beach when dogs are allowed off lead on the other beaches listed in the consultation? And then the second question, and I will only read the question part of this because there's a lengthy statement that follows. Could the Cabinet please inform of a safe, accessible beach, dedicated dog exercise area in Lyme Regis Town that can be used by dog owners to exercise their dogs off lead during the permitted period that dogs are allowed on the front Lyme Regis beaches between 1st October and 30th April.
Thank you, Jonathan. Sarah Locke-Lavelle.
Excellent, thank you very much, Lee. So question 11, I would like to ask the question, why has Lyme Regis taken the view that dogs are to be excluded from the only family and disabled accessible beach during quiet months when the town's businesses rely on this tourism income to survive? This is incredibly relevant during the current pandemic, and I also believe that having a unitary council would mean the majority view would win over. Please, can you clarify the council's overall position on this? And question 2, should each individual town council have held some sort of widely known referendum to find out the public's views, as I did not hear anything about this in Lyme Regis? I was only aware of the 10,000 signatures on the petition that the public signed in favour of allowing dogs on the front beach off the lead to continue during the winter months. I would like to ask, will the petition in Lyme Regis be taken into account when Dorset Council make their final decision?
Thank you very much, Chief Exec. I think there's one more from Helen Freeman. Jonathan?
Yes, question from Helen Freeman, or more of a statement. So please do consider those like me who are older and unable to walk. We need our turn on the beaches with our dogs. I believe off-lead time is needed by dogs too, on walkways. Yes, they need to be on leads, but we all need to share this world. Sadly, some folk don't want to do this. Finally, during this year, many of us suffered. It's not the right time to alter any arrangements, as many have not been able to come out. If like me, you've been staying away due to COVID-19, we need time to heal before things change.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Now back to Jill Haynes now to respond to all those questions, Jill.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It was really good to have all of those questions. And if I went through a full answer for each one, I think we'd be here for more than an hour. So although there will be a full answer for each one provided, I'm actually going to sort of précis the results. And you'll have noticed from the questions that, you know, there were people asking from different sides of an argument. And of course, that is exactly what has happened here. So I'd like to say thank you everybody for the questions and the good work that many of you do around responsible dog ownership. The public consultation to help the draft order was widely distributed and received a very high response. We had over 8,000 respondents. The Council, including the Dog Warden Service, is committed to working with communities and groups to support responsible dog ownership. And I will ensure that our officers liaise with these groups to help achieve our shared ambitions. Many questioners have touched on the matter of dog fouling, and the draft order is very clear about this and will require the removal of dog fouling. However, the Council has limited enforcement resources, and we have to target these to hotspot areas. We rely on working with dog owners and groups to spread awareness and explain the public health dangers from fouling. It is often difficult for dog wardens to witness an incident of fouling, and we have sought to improve local intelligence to help us with this. The information that people request about fines will be provided in the full response that they will receive and will be in the minutes of this council's meeting. We will look to review the aspect of the service and what we are doing with the limited resources that we have available. We do appreciate that mobility issues can have an impact on people's ability to walk their dog, and the draft order does facilitate a range of on-lead and off-lead locations for dog owners to use across the council area. However, I should say that dogs can get sufficient exercise even when on a lead. The comments included in the report were carefully chosen to represent the reviews on all sides, and the appendix is a total list of the comments. The comments are not deemed to be facts or true, but merely as part of the consultation response. It would therefore not be appropriate to remove any comment on the basis that somebody disagrees with me. So thank you, Chairman, and as I say, the full responses will be sent to those people who were good enough to send us questions, and we will also ensure that they and the information they provided before their questions will be in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. We've now got a question from John Colvert.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. So, given the shortfall in the budget, could the Council Cabinet confirm that it will recommend that the Council minimises the use of consultants and, more important still, minimise the creation of bespoke IT systems and instead use current software that works for lots of other councils?
Thank you very much, Chief Exec. I'm going to respond to this particular question. I'd like to first of all thank Mr. Colvert for this question and suggestions of where we can look for savings. Dorset Council's workforce is diverse with a broad base of skills, knowledge and expertise. There are, however, occasions when specialist skills or expertise from outside of the council need to be brought in. Often they will be for specific projects or programmes of work. I can confirm that the council seeks to minimise such spend and only buys in consultancy support when it needs to. And in response to the point about bespoke IT systems, I can confirm that Dorset Council operates very few of these, and the vast majority of our software applications are bought off the shelf. However, it should be noted that most off-the-shelf systems require some form of configuration to allow them to support Dorset Council's business's process. And I can confirm that part of our approach to savings this year and next is to reduce the number of software applications that the organisation uses. Thank you very much. So now we'll go on to question number 14 from Linda Nunn.
Good morning, Leader. This is a question from Linda Nunn about Diners Hollow. How is Dorset Council Cabinet seeking to fulfil its obligations under Section 85 of the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000 when it has not consulted or engaged with the Cranbourne Chase Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty Partnership on Diners Hollow since the formation of Dorset Council?
I'll ask Ray Bryan to respond, please.
Thank you, Leader. The former Dorset County Council Cabinet suspended work on the project in December 2015, and no work has been done on the stabilisation project for nearly 5 years. Dorset Council was formed more recently in April 2020. It is acknowledged in the report to Cabinet, Appendix A, paragraphs 7.1, that due to the time elapsed since the suspension of the project, reports and consents would need to be reviewed and updated. This includes consultation that runs alongside the ecological studies, the landscape visual impact assessment and tree surveys. The previous consent to fell trees covered by the tree preservation order has expired and a new application will be required. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. Question 15 from Richard Burden.
Yes, thank you, Leader. One, can the Diners Hollow and Melby Abbas are on a C-class road within a nationally designated area of outstanding natural beauty. Why is Dorset Council actively routing HGVs, heavy goods vehicles, onto this C-class road through the outstanding area for natural beauty when there are obvious bottlenecks in the village? The vibrations from heavy goods vehicles could increase the risks of landslides in Diners Hollow, and the heavy goods vehicles disturb an extensive area of the outstanding area of natural beauty.
Thank you very much, Chief Exec. Ray Bryan.
Yes, thank you, Leader. The Council's HGV policy for the A350 C13 route strategically between Blandford Forum and Shaftesbury was agreed at the Cabinet meeting of the former Dorset County Council on the 6th of December 2017. The advisory routing works by directing northbound HGVs along the A350 and southbound on the C13 through Melbury Abbas. Mitigation measures have been put in place, including the installation of vehicle activated signs, VAS, in Blandford and Shaftesbury to direct HGVs, along with an additional VAS being installed in Melbury Abbas to complement the existing HGV warning signs. In addition, the traffic signals through the barriered section of Diners Hollow has been made permanent to slow vehicles in the 20 mph, ensuring a smooth flow of vehicles through this narrow section within the village. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. Last but not least, there's a question from Peter Boyer.
Thank you, Leader. Can the Council please answer question 7 that was asked at the Cabinet meeting on 8th of September 2020? A directly relevant and meaningful reply is requested in the interests of maintaining confidence in the exercise of the planning function by the Council. The full question and the earlier response from the Council are contained in the minutes of the Cabinet meeting on 8th of September 2020, contained within the papers for this meeting.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I'll ask David Walsh to respond, please.
Thank you, Leader. At the Cabinet meeting of the 8th of September, question 7, Mr. Bowyer asked how and when the residents of Dorset and their communities will be able to assist in the creation of a vision for the Dorset People's Local Plan, other than responding to any consultation in late 2020, early 2021. The follow-up question now seeks a direct, relevant and meaningful reply. The response I gave at that meeting is minuted, and I believe answers the question, so I do not propose to repeat my reply. As a point of clarification, the emerging plan is called the Dorset Local Plan, not the Dorset People's Local Plan. It will be a plan for Dorset and its communities, and is subject to statutory processes for engagement, consultation, and public examination. The people of Dorset are therefore able to comment, engage, and help shape the final plan. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, David. That's the end of public questions. Could I, at this point, say thank you very much to all of the public who took time to put questions into the Council, into the Cabinet today. So really helpful. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Leader. Sorry to interrupt. There is a part 2 to that question. Was part 2 of the question read out from Mr. Bowyer?
I asked Jonathan.
Apologies, Chairman, it has slipped. It was on the next page on my screen.
Ah, right, okay.
So part 2 of the question, given that houses are financial assets and that building more houses in Dorset shows no evidence of falling prices, how does the Council consider that proposals in the planning white paper, if it's adopted, will ensure that local housing need is the driver for the Dorset local plan?
I'll ask David to respond, please.
Thank you, Leader. Sorry for the confusion. At present, housing needs are assessed based on a national methodology. The government is proposing revision to the standard method for calculating housing numbers, which, if confirmed, may set binding figures for local authorities. The white paper also proposes that local plans should identify growth areas, renewal areas, and protected areas. And so housing requirements, whether through existing standard methodology or binding targets, would then be directed to suitable areas via local plans. In addition, it is proposed that a single infrastructure levy would replace the current community infrastructure levy, and planning obligations, including affordable housing. There is still uncertainty over whether these proposals will carry forward, or indeed how they would work in practice. And Dorset Council is considering its response to the government's white paper at this meeting. Having said that, It is anticipated that local affordability needs will continue to be a key priority for local plans, and Dorset Council is committed to securing high quality, affordable homes for its communities. At present, work is continuing on the emerging local plan, and consultation will take place in the new year on the proposals in the plan, including its approach to delivering affordable housing across Dorset. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, David. Now we move on to written questions from members. And in fact, actually, the first one is a statement from Sherry Jesperson. So over to you, Sherry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just let me get my... The proposals for the Dinos Hollow slope stabilisation includes the requirement to close the C13 for 7 months. You may recall, as I most certainly do, that during the previous work on Dinos Hollow, the road was closed from April 2014 to July 2015. I also recall the impact this had on the lives of the residents in the villages in the area, which bore the burden of the displaced traffic. So bad was this damage and disruption that the Dorset County Council eventually suggested in 2015 that the risk associated with the continued road closures was greater than the risk of the slopes collapsing. The report to Dorset County Council Cabinet in May 15 on the risk comparison analysis of the decision to close the C13 stated, and I quote, "The closure of the C13 at Melbury Abbas has had significant ramifications on the community and the local road network in terms of both the size and the number of vehicles now using unsuitable roads to circumnavigate the road closures, and also the subsequent impact on this increase in traffic is having on the roads themselves." I further quote, "A number of neighbouring hamlets and villages are now experiencing an increase in traffic volumes. This is having a dramatic effect on the residents' quality of life and has led to considerable disquiet from those living in these communities. It has been suggested that the damage and disruption caused by the road closure outweighs the perceived damage of the slopes collapsing. The report refers further to increase in collisions, damage to vehicles and property, and serious damage to the highway itself resulting from this road closure, and describes how vehicles, including HGVs, avoiding the diversion route are having a disproportionately high impact on those living alongside these roads. The residents in these same villages are now to be asked to endure this disruption and serious impact on the quality of their lives once again. Could I ask, therefore, that the lessons learnt during the previous closure of the C13 are used to, firstly, provide all possible mitigation measures to reduce the impact of the road closure on the neighbouring communities, introduce in good time a wide and full communications plan to keep the local communities informed of plans and progress, plan and budget for the inevitable repair work to the surrounding road network, and above all, make it a priority to keep the length of the road closure as brief as possible. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Ray, do you want to make any comment? I mean, it's not a question, it's a statement. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think it's important that I say to both councillors who are responsible in this area that I intend to work very closely with them and make sure that they also have a major impact into what we do. And I've taken on board what Sherry has actually said, and I'm perfectly happy to meet with them at any time as we progress, subject to the Cabinet's decision today, the work we have to do at Diners Hollow. But she's made some very good, valid points, which I was, through numerous emails received over the last few days, aware of. So all this is now going to be on the table for discussion, and I welcome on future discussions. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. We've now got a question from Jane Somper.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you for that response, Ray. I suspect it will be very similar following my question. I've read both the Cabinet report and the previous reports from 2013-14 in relation to the works of the slopes at Diners Hollow. A geotechnical engineer identified potential complete failure due to the instability of the slopes. The report delivered by Brodie Forbes did state the chance of this is rare, with no significant slippage, where the slopes have existed for many hundreds of years. However, the report does also state there is a chance that changes due to climate change, with the extreme weather conditions becoming more frequent and the impact on the vegetation conditions, that damage caused by intense periods of rainfall could trigger a major collapse of the slopes, and the concrete barriers currently in place would not be sufficient to hold back the tons of soil that could fall. The decision to put on hold the original scheme to provide the required stability of soil nails and mesh in 2015 was due to a discussion on funding bids in relation to the north-south corridor of the M4 and ports of Poole and Portland. This has not yet moved forward, although at the last Cabinet meeting approval was given for Dorset Council to join the Western Gateway Partnership, where this and other potential routes are to be looked at in a government-funded strategic transport report. I do recognise and fully accept that this Council must take all measures to protect all road users who drive through the hollow, and we cannot allow any risk to life. So my question is, this is an extremely sensitive and protracted issue for all residents living in Diners Hollow, Melbury Abbas, and residents living along the A350 in a number of villages. And as a result of this, and in order for me to fulfil the commitment that I've made to my residents, I expect to be kept fully informed of all developments leading to the decision as to how the Council intends to proceed with Diners Hollow. My engagement with the officers must enable me to report to residents on the progress being made at every stage. Can you kindly confirm that this will be put in place? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. I'll ask Ray Bryan to respond, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And again, thank you for the question. It's always nice to see so many of our local councillors taking interest in what is happening in their areas. To reassure you of our proposed application to join the Western Gateway Powerhouse, this is mainly to align the geographies of our transport and economic partnerships. Whilst of course we hope this strengthens our ability to attract funding, this does not fundamentally change anything with regards to Diners Hollow at this stage. It is obviously important that residents are given clear, accurate and timely information on this extremely sensitive and protracted issue. This is the case whether we are talking about managing the situation on the ground or rather more removed strategic discussions which may not directly impact residents right now but could have significant implications in the longer term. A communications plan will be prepared for the project. Officers will be proactive in seeking comment and providing progress reports to members and others with an interest in the project. A member of the project team will always be available to answer questions. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to confirm, Leader, that I will be taking a personal interest in making sure that our two local councillors are kept fully informed throughout all the plans, and they're welcome to attend any meeting that is taking place on Diners Hollow. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. I've got a question from Councillor Nick Ireland.
Thank you, Chairman. The recent shocking comments by a Dorset councillor at the Police and Crime Panel have highlighted the need for at least some councillors to receive equality and diversity training beyond which they received when elected. Will this council's leader organise an appropriate course for those who aren't already beyond redemption? Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. The recent comments made by Councillor Pipe at the Police and Crime Panel were clearly unacceptable and extremely disappointing. Councillor Pipe has rightly apologised unreservedly for what he said. I can also confirm that Councillor Pipe has requested equality and diversity training and has been removed by me from the Police and Crime Panel last week with immediate effect. This course of action, which was finalised late last week, accords with the views expressed by those from whom I sought an opinion or advice. Equality and diversity training is provided annually for all members of the Council, and the next training session will be delivered at the earliest opportunity. As councillors, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves about the issues and injustices faced by all members of our communities, so we can properly represent them. I shall be strongly encouraging all members to attend this annual training. Right, I can't hear anything else. So I move on to the forward plan. Everyone, this is really to accept the forward plan. It has been, as you appreciate, it will be published beyond the meeting today. I believe it's up to date as it can be. This is an iterative process, so things move around on a regular basis, but it does set out the broad thrust of the business of the Cabinet going forward. So are we all agreed to accept?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We do on to agenda item 7 now. Initial high-level draft budget information 2021-22 and the medium-term financial plan for 23 to 26. And I'll invite Councillor Gary Suttle to report, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman. Gary Suttle, Cabinet Member for Finance. I present to you this morning the medium-term financial plan and budget strategy update. This paper is a stocktake of work that Cabinet asked officers to carry out over the summer. Firstly, to identify a first cut of the budget data and a draft budget gap for the Cabinet to consider, and secondly, to identify a range of tactical and transformation savings that can be initiated as soon as possible, with a view to these costs being out of the system by 1st of April 2021. I don't think it's any surprise that I say we live in unprecedented times. The effect of COVID-19 has been the most catastrophic decimation of our finances in modern times, leading to the most challenging budget setting that I've ever been involved in. The report before you identifies that the continuing budget pressures on many of our most significant services reveal a gap of 41.899 million for year 1 of our medium-term financial plan. Currently, the work carried out over the summer has identified tactical savings of 11.9 million, and these are detailed in the paper at 13.1. And additionally, we believe that transformation savings can be achieved of 8.2 million. Even so, we still remain in a position of a budget gap of 21.8 million before any further work is carried out. The leader has and will continue to fight our cause with the Minister for additional funding to replace the cost of supporting our residents during the pandemic. But there is more than that in these figures. The cost of children's and adult services, often blamed for budget overspends, are facts of life. Government is not supporting local councils sufficiently to maintain the high standards that our residents deserve, and we deliver. I know the leader is asking for much more than COVID cost replacement. And as we all agree, we need a new funding scheme. But that's not going to happen now, and our best hope is a further contribution from government towards our costs, but I doubt that it will be 21.8 million. In fact, I doubt it will make any significant dent in our budget gap at all. Paragraph 15 talks about further work to close the gap, but I want to stress that this work is not a thing we're thinking about. This is work we're doing now, and that budget holders and portfolio holders are being asked to make significant savings to address the gap. I wish to stress that we remain positive, confident and resolute, and that spend to save remains on the table. We'll deal with tomorrow, but I'm planning for the coming years with a financial strategy to see stable future budgets and the long-term protection of our council services. Your input and support is paramount. Working together as a council to combat the effects of a pandemic on our finances is the way in which we will support our residents in the long term. I ask you to accept the recommendations on page 1. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Gary. Before I seek comments or questions from the Cabinet. As always, I'm happy to invite any other member of the council wishes to ask a question, and I've just seen one in the chat box, and I'll come to that in a minute, because I think it's really important that colleagues do get an opportunity to ask questions of any of the portfolio holders. And before I do that, can I just say this is really the first stage of a multiple stage of event leading up to the presentation of a budget to Cabinet, I believe in January, then to full council in February. So I'm expecting significant amount of member involvement in that process as we go forward, and I'm sure that will be welcomed by Gary and all other members, all other Cabinet colleagues. So my first question is from Kelvin Clayton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Paragraph 16.4 of the report, in noting that we've declared a climate and ecological emergency, goes on to say, as such, it would be expected that funding might be allocated to deliver the outcomes of the Council's emergency strategy. However, at present, no funding is included in the medium-term financial plan for this work, and this might be seen as a significant risk. Could I have an assurance that our climate and ecological emergency strategy and action plan will be fully funded?
Gary, would you like to come back on that, please? You're muted, Gary.
Probably best I remain that way, I thought. Kelvin, thank you. You know that I have a strong commitment to climate change funding. But you also know that as yet we have yet to see the full costings from Ray, which I'm sure, I don't know if Ray wants to make a comment. I cannot give you an assurance that we can fully fund the cost, because as I understand it, the cost is likely to be in excess of 100 million. And because of that, we have to take a view. But that doesn't mean there isn't work going on. There's a lot of work going on about power and the way in which we can try and make inroads into this problem. And one thing I don't want you to think is that we are ignoring our commitment to this. I don't know if Ray has any comment at this stage.
Yes, that's a good call, Gary. Ray, would you like to add anything to what Gary said?
Yes, and I understand where Kelvin's coming from on this, because obviously we've done a lot of hard work on producing the report. We have got a costed report, which is in front of Cabinet later on this agenda. The total number that we're looking at is circa 130 million. But I have to say that a lot of the actions are within our own power. It's just a change of the way we do things, and that will reduce the carbon footprint of the council. But we will require substantial funding, and along with colleagues, I am endeavouring to get the attention of ministers, because some of this funding will have to come from central office, as we were aware of during the meetings we had, Kelvin. And I am putting a lot of pressure now on ministers. In fact, I've spent the last 3 days attending meetings, and I probably shouldn't say it, but I'm going to, at the Conservative conference, where the main item on the agendas of several people has been climate change, and I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that. There's great discussions going on hydrogen, but as recently as last week, I met with Gary and a number of people to discuss how we can overcome power supplies and making sure we're looking to the future to make Dorset Council self-sufficient on power. And I have to say, I received very, very positive vibes from Councillor Suttle on help towards us achieving this. So please keep the faith with us. I understand where you're coming from, and we'll do a lot in the short term that actually won't cost us too much money, but we need to get on with those jobs now. So I really do take your point. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Ray. Gary, anything else to add?
Yeah, I'll just add that thank you very much to Ray for that, and that we are very much very keen to look at the power generation, which will give us a effectively 100% green energy for this council within a relatively short amount of time. Obviously, this was prepared pre the report that Ray's bringing later on. During the coming month or so, you will see amendments to this budget, and I'll discuss with all the council what level of budget we believe we're able to input to this particular climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Kelvin, for your question. Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Fellow councillors, I, above all, recognise the dire economic position we are in. I want to ask you, particularly probably to Councillor Gary Suttle, the position for the poorest communities in Dorset. How will you ensure they are not left behind? I have seen a few items in the press lately also expressing concern on this, and that is my question, whether you can give any answer. So I apologise, I haven't given you notice on this. I have read through the report.
That's okay, Paul. Gary?
Thank you, Paul. I mean, I think the most important thing is that we maintain services, and whatever we do, we have to support those services. It was commitment of the leader at the beginning, although he had no idea of COVID-19 heading his way, but we would maintain services. And I think that's the most important thing, because the poorest in the community suffer most when services are removed, and the support and continued support for that is paramount in any budget that we produce. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. There are no other requests coming through, so I'll open it up to the Cabinet colleagues. Anything to add to what Gary said, or were you content to accept the report as set out?
I'm content, Chairman.
Content, Chairman.
Agreed. Content, agreed. Thank you very much. And good piece of work, Gary. Long way to go yet, but we've got to get a grip of this, obviously. Well, we move on now then to agenda item 8, Dorset Workplace. Peter Wharf.
Thank you, Chairman. Peter Wharf, Deputy Leader. The Dorset Workplace is something that we've not talked about in detail at any previous cabinet, so I'm going to give a bit of background, which I hope people, other members and people who are watching will find of interest. The programme of work aims to bring about a significant change to the way a large number of our employees work, and it's based on the principle that work is something that we do rather than somewhere we go. Although the Dorset Workplace is an important enabler to allow a rationalisation of the council office estate, it shouldn't be seen as just being about bricks and mortar. It's about how we work. Some time ago we agreed the 4 principles as part of the council plan, which were 1, customer focused, 2, effective and modern, 3, employer of choice, and 4, sustainable organisation. And the Dorset Workplace contributes to all of these. It's designed to allow employees to work in different ways that mean they are at their most effective, serving our customers best, reducing the cost of services where possible. And to achieve this, we need to make an investment in things which support the change, for example, technology, work processes, physical workspaces, employee development and well-being. Given our corporate principles, it was always our intention to bring about this type of change. However, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on work has now given us an evidence base to support the fact that many of our employees can and do and wish to work differently. Although we have learned a lot in the last 6 months, it is very important to stress that we intend to put in place, what we intend to put in place is about being agile and not related to being locked down. This is a point which is of concern to a number of staff. We surveyed our employees using a tool called Hive, and the survey was called Pulse because it tests the pulse of the organisation, and we asked them to tell us can and do they wish to work differently in a range of places at home, in an office, on site. Indeed, whenever it works best for customers, the council and individual employee. And we got some very interesting responses which indicated that a very large number of our employees wish to have greater flexibility. They found the ability to work virtually extremely useful. Nearly 80% want to work some or all of the time at home. However, we must not forget there are some people who are front facing and so can't work at home, or there are some people who can't work at home because of the physical limitations, or there are some people who can't work at home for other more personal reasons, and we have to recognise all of this. Discussions with managers have confirmed these arrangements, and it fits in with their vision of how the services should operate in the future. Trade unions have been consulted, and I've got a very long response from the trade unions, which I'm going to summarise. And they say working flexibly can achieve a better work-life balance for some of Dorset Council employees, and is something that Unison has been advocating for and can help retain staff and improve staff productivity. We recognise COVID-19 has shown us that it is possible and effective in some cases to work remotely. They make further points on the EQRA, Equality Impact Assessment, ways of working, reducing carbon emissions, the potential financial impact on employees, terms and conditions, employee wellbeing, and the timescales. All of these will be a feature of our ongoing engagement with trade union officials and colleagues. The recommendation is that we implement the Dorset workplace as soon as COVID restrictions allow us, and in practice we are implementing some as we go along, obviously. There is a cost estimated at just over £1 million, and this is to cover the rearranging of office spaces, wellbeing and learning and development support to managers and staff. We haven't yet got a detailed plan of the payback, but it's very clear to most people who've looked at it that the payback will be in a short period of time. By making this one-off investment, we will be able to significantly reduce our office footprint, making an ongoing revenue savings, which will be covered in the asset management plan, which is to be produced. Our employees will enjoy a better work-life balance, an essential aspect of being an employer of choice, which is one of our goals, and they will have the support and technology to best serve our residents. And we will also be able to reduce our carbon emissions through less community and business travel, as well as having a smaller office estate. So I recommend strongly this paper and the recommendations, and I would like to leave you with one particular example of Dorset Workplace. Developing the digital skills and knowledge of the workforce is a key enabler for the Dorset Workplace programme. Dorset Council has recently won an award for digital skills at the Connected Britain Awards, which recognises outstanding work to build our digital future. The officer who wrote that bit for me was too modest to say that we won first prize in a very, very strong field in a national organisation amongst our peers in terms of local authorities. We were recognised for an approach where we are helping to build digital skills for everyone within the organisation and local communities. This includes creating digital champions, a network, the podcast and digital learning opportunities such as the Festival of Future, which is being held next week. There are now 185 workforce digital champions who are developing skills in office, in teams, cascading that knowledge down to other people in their team and service to help to use these tools to be the modern and efficient digital council we aspire to be. We have some way to go, but we are on the right track. I would like to name check some officers who've made outstanding contributions in this particular area. Lisa Trickey, Penny Siddall, Sam McLaren and Delia Carr have been the main driving force behind this work, with Penny leading our really important digital inclusion work in communities. That ends my report, Chairman, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. I don't see any requests to speak in the chat box, so I'm going to open the item up to the cabinet colleagues. Anyone wish to make a comment? Or again, are you happy to accept the report as set out?
Happy to accept.
Happy to accept. Thank you very much. Good report, Peter, and well done for complimenting the officers. A great deal of work's gone into this, and it's going to give us a really good basis to go forward in this area. We go on to agenda item 9 now, approach for value for money. That's you again, Peter, I think.
Chairman, did we need to formally approve the recommendation?
I just did it.
You did? Fine, thank you very much.
Thank
you. This report has been reviewed and supported by both Audit and Governance Committee and Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee. The report sets out proposals for developing a timetable for carrying out a fundamental value for money review of all of the council services. This is not performance measurement, this is value for money. Predecessor councils to our setting up as a single authority had a range of arrangements in place for securing value for money. and Dorset Council needs to develop its approach such that it has a consistent single approach which works. Work has been delayed on this because of resources being diverted to the current pandemic, but the current financial situation means that this work now needs to be a priority. As part of the restructure of corporate services at the beginning of the year, new business partner roles were created in a range of corporate functions, and these people as business partners will be key to providing data, information, support and challenge through the fundamental service review process. Officers have contacted colleagues at the LGA and SWAP to see what support they may be able to get and to embark upon a benchmarking exercise to feed into the reviews. And we have, if you read the report, consulted with a number of other local authorities and other organisations across the land in order to do this. I would like to make some general points. This is a starting point. We have shared this with the committees and we will continue to share this as we develop it. It's at early stages, so this isn't something that people need to think, well, I must go through that committee. If anybody's got any ideas at any point, please send them to me. Right now the data is incomplete, so we will need to wash the data, get it complete, and we'll then need to refine as we go on. And we certainly need to have a best value process on procurement, because that's a key aspect of this, along with everything else, of course. So I commend this to the Cabinet and to councillors, and I ask you to keep watching and make any suggestions you've got. I won't be able to implement all of them, but we will consider everyone on its merits. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Peter. I've got a request to speak from Councillor Shane Bartlett. Shane.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it was an excellent report when it came before scrutiny. Could I just request, because as we didn't have the timelines established, and that can't be established until after the Cabinet have approved it, could I then request that, say, after a 6-month period, it comes back to scrutiny for us to review it, please?
Peter?
Absolutely. That was my intention. I've discussed this with the officers. I would see it going back to both the committees that it's already been on every 6 months, even if you don't need to look at it, but I'm very, very delighted to do that. And if something happens, if there's a major event, I should be recommending that it comes to you before, because I don't want to have some stage in the process and then you spend quite a long time before you get to comment on the stage. So the answer is yes to every 6 months, but it might be more frequently as required. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shane. It's good. That's a really good point. Anybody? I can't see anybody else in the chat box, so I'm going to open it up to the Cabinet. Colleagues, any comments to make? If not, I'll move to the recommendations and seek your agreement as set out in the report.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 10 now. Diners Hollow, slope stabilisation, and I'll hand over to Ray Bryan.
Thank you. Helps if I turn my screen on. Thank you, Chairman. The report in front of you is pretty self-explanatory. We have a problem at Diners Hollow. The reason given in the recommendation, I think, is fairly clear, but I'm going to read it to members. The impact of a major slope failure will be high in respect of health and safety and financial implications. Possible consequences are loss of life or major injury and legal action. There will be reputational damage, damage impact on service delivery and disruption to the highway network affecting the north-south route. During the last few hours, I have received a number of emails from residents who wish to ask questions at Cabinet. Can I just point out to them that all of their emails have been received and logged and will form part of the discussions going forward. It's no secret I have grave concerns over potential repercussions within Diners Hollow. I have the responsibility as portfolio holder for highways for ensuring at all times we maintain a safe and secure network. I have been to this site on numerous occasions As recently as yesterday, we were installing new traffic signs to try and help. It's no secret that we are in a period of climate change, and that being the case, these slopes become more vulnerable. I've taken on board some of the comments from local residents about actions we've taken in the past, and as I reported in answering a question earlier on, a lot of the work that we have done now needs to be revisited. You've got in front of you, I just had one other point. As recently as about half an hour ago, because we've been chasing the LEP for financial assistance on this, as members are aware, I've just received a response which says the Dorset LEP doesn't have any funding for any projects from April 2022, and all our current delivery must complete by the 31st of March 2022. Well, obviously this project cannot be delivered in that timescale. So what we've got to do is try and secure funding for future, for the future for this. It goes on to state, and this is coming from Lorna Carver, we are currently working on investment prospectus, which we hope will secure future funding by highlighting the investment opportunities and associated outputs and outcomes across Dorset. We will be working very closely with Dorset Council and other partners to ensure this prospectus reflects our local ambitions. So that at least gives us a glimmer of hope that we may get some of the funding for this from the LEP. Members, in front of you, you've got two recommendations. Recommendation 1 is the acquisition of the land and drainage works on the east side of Diners Hollow, Melbury Abbas, is progressed immediately at a total cost of 130. If I can just explain what that is, we have consent from the landowner to buy the land on the east side of Diners Hollow, and we will be, if we acquire that land, we can then get on with some protector work on drainage. That is a reasonably low cost item. Cabinet, the recommendation number 2, the Cabinet notes the scale of additional resource required to stabilise slopes throughout the hollow, and the affordability of the scheme should be considered alongside other priorities of the 2021-22 budget setting process and the MTFP. I'm not going to go into any more detail on the report. People have had plenty of time to look at it and study it, but I'm happy to take any questions, and I'd like to commend this to the Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Ray. Again, I don't see any request to speak in the chat bar. I'll open it up to the Cabinet. Colleagues. Oh, Jane I'm sorry, just as I was saying that, there is a Jane Somber wants to ask a question. Jane.
That's okay. Thank you very much. If I could ask portfolio holder if he would be able to respond. I know that he's going to collate all the additional questions that have come in and statements that have come in, but unfortunately the chairman of the parish council was given the incorrect timing for his question to come in, and I would ask that you would be able to respond specifically to his email that came through, rather than have that as just one part of your collation.
Thank you, Jane. Ray, that seems a reasonable request.
Yes, it is, and I will be responding to all of the emails, Jane, because I think it's imperative that we keep the local residents on board as much as we can. I'm very aware of the disruption this work is going to cause, and it's sad to see that we've got to do it, but it's a question of life, and it's something I take very, very seriously, but I will respond to each email. We have been receiving emails for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and we've been sending responses out, courtesy of the secretaries. But no, I will make sure that a full response goes to everybody. That I can promise you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Jane. There's nobody else in the chat box now, so I'm going to open it up to the Cabinet. Colleagues. Tony, do you want to, Tony Ferrari, do you want to briefly pick up on the point about the LEP and about the need to include it in any future we're putting together?
Switch my camera on. Thank you. We will ensure that we are currently at the point of having to submit our funding proposals for 22-23. And I'll make sure that this is one of the proposals that go forward in that group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. I got Andrew Parry.
Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues may recall some years ago a landslip in the Bedminster area resulted in a tragic loss of life, and amendments were made to the grounds around that area to ensure better protection for future. If we were to be inactive in addressing the situation at Diners Hollow, are we facing the potential of a corporate liability on both ourselves as councillors and as the council as a body?
Thank you, Andrew. Ray?
Having taken legal advice, thank you for the question, actually, Andrew. Having taken legal advice, the answer is yes. We would be responsible if we're not doing looking at this, knowing that there is a potential. The report points out quite clearly that we have a responsibility and a liability. So this does need to be dealt with in the quickest and most sensible way.
Thank you very much, Ray. Jonathan Mayer.
Chairman, just to be clear, there is some detailed legal advice which sits behind this. If there was a tragic accident at this location, it is by no means certain that the council would be legally culpable. There would have to a great deal of work would have to go into that before we made that accepted that as a position.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Jonathan. That's very helpful. I've got no other requests to speak, colleagues. Ray's set out the recommendations in the report. Can we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item 11 now, Weymouth Harbour and Esplanade Flood and Coastal Erosion Risk Management Strategy. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Tony Ferrari.
Thank you, Chair. Tony Ferrari, portfolio holder for economic development, and particularly the economic development and regeneration of Weymouth. It's difficult to overstate the scope and significance of this project. It's exceptional to approve plans that cost over £100 million and take a century to be completed. There's a risk of flooding in Weymouth, and this risk will increase with sea level rise. The council declared a climate emergency, and we're making great strides to reduce our contributions to global warming. This paper addresses the other side of the same issue. How do we protect Weymouth until the world deals with the fundamental problem of climate change? The paper presents a phased strategy to deal with currently projected sea level rise. It also includes checkpoints, so we can, at intervals, look at what really happened and modify the plan accordingly. At one level, it's a tremendous flood defence scheme, but its impact goes far beyond that simple rationale. Economically, it will give confidence to business that Weymouth is a safe place to invest, ensuring jobs for the town in the future. In its own right, it's one of the largest civil engineering projects in Dorset in recent times. With it will come many jobs, both on the works themselves and to the local businesses who support them. From local contractors to the sandwich shops selling lunch to the workers, many companies will increase their businesses, boosting the local economy. At this point, I should also offer thanks to government, and in particular the Environment Agency. Without their technical support and their absolutely enormous financial contribution to this great scheme, it would not have been possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our generation has caused sea level rise. Whatever we achieve in reducing that problem, this paper ensures that we pass on a protected Weymouth to the next generation, and I commend it to Cabinet. I'd also like to hand over to Councillor Bryan, who'd like to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Ray, want to add?
Yeah, thank you for a very good introduction, young Mr. Ferrari. Coastal erosion is something that we face as a result of climate change. Both Councillor Ferrari and I will be working hard to ensure we protect not just Weymouth, but other vulnerable areas such as Swanage, etc. This weekend has highlighted the need for action. I received a number of requests from local businesses as to where they could obtain sandbags. On a regular basis, water in Weymouth is seen to come up out of the storm drains. I'd like to place on record my thanks to the officers for the very detailed work that has gone into this report, and I look forward to being able to work with them to make sure it bears fruit. Whilst this is a Weymouth paper, we must look at how we can solve flooding problems throughout the whole of the DC area. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray, and to Tony, obviously. I've got a couple of colleagues who wish to, before I open the debate, wish to speak. Mark Roberts.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the Cabinet holders for introducing this very comprehensive and extremely good report. I welcome the government's change in the cost-benefit structure that will enable businesses to be taken into account more than just residences, which will obviously help on the funding of this, the grant in aid. I also note the encouraging support from Ron Curtis of the Environment Agency, who I sit with as your representative at the Wessex Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, which of course is the committee that approves expenditure like this. I would just a slight question. The white paper on planning proposes changes to section 106 and the community infrastructure levy, and some of the costings are based on collecting the levy. Will this significantly affect this budget if the white paper is enacted, or can we deal with that in the future?
Thank you, Mark. I'm just trying to decide who's going to answer that question. Shall we start with Tony? Then I might ask David Walsh to comment. Tony?
The honest answer to the question is don't know. We have a commitment from the Environment Agency to fund the programme. We will have to debate how that actually takes place, but there's a commitment from them in writing that they'll fund it, and I'm confident therefore that we can deliver this programme, although the route of the finance may change. Thank you.
Can I suggest then what we do is it's a very good question, Mark. Can we take the question away and make sure that yourself and all other members of the council get to a response that's a bit fuller with a bit more detail, so we can have a look at picking up the implications of what you've said to see whether there will have any impact on the funding. Can we take that away? Is that okay?
I'm very happy with that. I just wanted to flag it as a potential.
No, it's a very fair question, unless David Walsh wants to say anything.
Well, as you say, Chairman, we need more detail, and that's the same for the white paper. They're major headlines, but there's little detail underneath it. Yes, they want to reform the infrastructure levy and how it's done and how 106 is done, but there's little detail in saying how they're going to do it. So that's what we must wait for. So okay. No, I have nothing further. Sorry.
All right. Thank you. But there's still clarification there, David. Thank you. Yeah. Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Fellow councillors. Just for information, I was the chair of the Harbour Committee that got to the present sea defences, and I know that went on for some time. My main point I wish council to note is that on Portland we've got a lot of experience about flooding and the after effects. One of the big areas that came to us on Portland was the amount of community that got involved, and I hopefully this will go to the Weymouth Town Council for them to start to organise, and also to try and bring about ordinary people that have got some ordinary people that got a lot of expertise. I know when we had these problems and we had a lot of money spent on our sea defences on Portland, members of the community and some big engineers within the community were very, very helpful. So I'm just asking that there is a bit of diversification on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Tony, do you want to come back on it, or Ray?
I'll come back briefly. This has been well pre-trailed with Weymouth Town Council. They've had copies of this some time ago and are thinking about how to embed it in their strategy for the future. But I have to say, Paul, the aim of the exercise is to stop volunteers having to deal with flooding, not to deal with it after the event. But your points are well taken, but the aim of the paper is to stop us needing to do those things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. There is no other request to speak that I can see. So we've got the recommendation set out in the report. Colleagues, can we agree?
Agree.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item 12 now. Dorset Council Climate and Ecological Emergency Strategy Delivery Plan. Ray Bryan.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Members will remember in May 2019, this council declared a climate emergency. This was amended at a later council meeting to read a climate and ecological emergency. Since then, this council has prepared a full strategy and action plan, which we now need to take to public consultation. The financial numbers are based in two areas. One is business as usual, and the other will be additional costs. The business as usual, where we can make changes without incurring horrendous additional costs. These are things like reduction in business mileage, changing vehicles to electric when replacing them, plus many other areas. There's listed over 100 areas that will be business as usual. This still leaves a balance of things that we can't deal with as business as usual. So we have an additional expense that could, and looks at the moment, totaling close on 130 million between now and 2040. We are now ready to take this to public consultation. The public consultation document will come before the EAP and also the Scrutiny Committee in mid-October, and subject to final amendments will go to the public in late October for an 8-week period. This is obviously subject to approval by Cabinet today. Consultation will be via our website, and in addition, paper versions will be available at a number of selected sites across Dorset. We're planning a webinar to all members to explain how they can help get people to respond. And we also intend to invite town and parish councils to a webinar so they can help get the public to respond. It's absolutely imperative that the public have their input into this with such a vast cost. Conversations will be happening later today, I hope, with Councillor Parry and his team as to how we can get help from the schools. The younger generation is the generation that will feel the impact of what we do. So in my opinion, they should have a big say. We've had several EAP meetings that have been attended by children from the community, and to say they're inspiring is an understatement, as I'm sure my colleagues on the EAP will confirm. The good thing about getting the children involved is they'll get their parents and grandparents to also take part in the consultation. Member, the paper in front of you has 2 recommendations. But I have to say the action and strategy plan are live documents and have been updated on a regular basis. As this is the case, I would like to add a 3rd recommendation, and that will be that the portfolio holder, in conjunction with the Executive Director of Place, will have the final say on the wording of the final document. With this amendment, I commend it to the Council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ray. Can I compliment you and all the other members and the officers involved in this piece of work? It's very extensive, very time consuming, but very, very important as we go forward, as you said, in dealing with the ecological and climate changes that we're clearly going to experience. I've got a question from Kelvin Clayton.
Sorry, Chair, thanks. Just took a moment to unmute. Yeah, I mean, thanks to all the officers for their hard work on this, and this action plan does contain a great many great ideas. But in my very humble opinion, a good action plan should have targets. Ideally smart targets. They should have a named person responsible for those targets and review dates for each one. Could I ask when targets are going to be added to this action plan?
Ray, can you pick that one up, please?
I'm hoping that I've got Anthony Littlechild in the background, and I'm hoping he can give us more detail on this. Anthony, are you there?
I am, hopefully. Hello, good morning. Yes, Kelvin, so attached to the paper is an example of the building section of the action plan, which will be the action plans that go out to public consultation. So within each of those sections, there is sort of more detail added in terms of timescales, sort of an expression of costs and carbon savings, and an initial sort of target in the immediate time frame. So what you've been presented with initially with the color coding on it is a sort of summary of a much larger spreadsheet which includes a range of those targets.
So could I just quickly come back?
Yes,
specific targets
can,
will be added for each of the items.
Yes, within those action plans. For those, the targets that are in the summary action plans will be those that are in the short-term targets.
Okay, Kelvin.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you very much. Maria Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's more of a statement really, and it is to thank the officers who've been involved in developing this action plan. A lot of work's gone into it. My question is along the same lines as Councillor Clayton, and I think without more specific time-related targets, a lot of the actions won't happen. This is one of my major concerns. I've looked at the buildings paper, and a lot of the actions won't even start until 2023. Many of the actions in the action plan are soft actions, which are going to be difficult to quantify. So actions that start with the words such as lobby, campaign, encourage, support. I don't see them going anywhere. So it's more of a statement really than a question.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Ray, do you want to come back?
Yes, I do want to come back on that because it's been the subject of discussion at several of the EAPs. But I would go to my original statement, which said this is a live document. It's been amended on a regular basis. And I actually support what both Councillor Rowe and Councillor Clayton are saying, and that's we need to set some targets. But obviously this is all relevant to our financial position. If I can just make reference to the planning issues, we know only too well, Councillor Rowe, that it is government that will set the rules on the on buildings and planning. And I think I'm right in saying that at the local plan EAPs, we have pushed very hard on doing what we can do locally, but most of it is outside of our gift. And if I may, Chairman, I'm going to ask Councillor David Walsh whether he'd like to pass comment on the issue on planning.
You got ahead of me, Ray. I was going to do exactly that because I think that's a very good move. David.
I was ahead of both of you. I was ready.
Oh, as usual. Carry on.
That's the thing with the EAP. Ray is perfectly correct, because at every meeting we have, climate change obviously is raised and how we can better things. As I say to people, with the local plan, it's not going to be ready for 4 years. Now, we need these things solving now. We need to put pressure on developers who could build zero carbon now, but we cannot enforce it. Until our local plan is adopted and gone through examination, those policies cannot be enforced and could be challenged legally. So we need to keep lobbying government, because government can change national policy very quickly. They have procedures to go through, obviously, but they can do it a lot quicker than we can. And we need their support in achieving what they want, because our plan will not be ready until it goes through examination, as I've said. So yes, we can put the policies in place, but we might be beaten by development that comes up between now and then. This is a very serious problem, which is why it's raised at every EAP. But we must continue lobbying MPs and government to bring in national policy changes. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, David, and you make a very good point. I've got David Took.
Thank you, Leader. Just on David Walsh's comment, is it possible to do anything with a supplementary planning document which can adapt and change the existing local plan, as I understand it?
No, is the short answer. Because supplementary planning documents, it's not supplementary planning policy, it's supplementary planning documents, have to go through the same procedure. The local plan is the quickest that we can possibly do anything, because everything has to go through consultation, engagement, it has to go through procedure. I mean, one member thought we could just put a policy change to council and have council agree it. You can't possibly do that. It's got to go to public consultation. As I say, it's got to be done lawfully, because when you have a policy, it's a legal policy and that can stand up in a court of law. So we have to go through every one of these procedures. There is no quick, short fix, or we'd be doing the local plan a lot quicker, I assure you. It's a good point and people raise it, right, but we have to go through government procedure.
Just if I could come back, please.
Yeah, go on. Come back.
We've got an SPD for heathland protection, which is joint between ourselves and BCP. An SPD is a document adding further detail to the policies in the local plan. So I'm slightly surprised that it's completely impossible and a slow way of doing it. I'll bow to David's expertise and knowledge on this, but I'm very surprised.
I'll have a go. Let me see how good I am at David. June 2006, when the UK adopted Clause 48, the Habitats Regulations, we had to bring in the policies around heathland mitigation, the 400 metres, the 5 kilometre stuff. That supplementary planning guidance is based on legislation. And what David's saying is, if you want change, we've got to get government to make those changes. So we've got a platform on which we can then develop our own plans locally. How does that go, David?
I hear that. But well, thank you very much, both of you.
Okay. Oh, thanks very much for the question, David. I don't see any other questions. So we've got colleagues. Anybody wish to comment?
Chairman, if I can just come back on something, if I may. I pointed out earlier on when we were talking about climate change, just how much work had gone in the last 3 days during our party conference, or my party's conference. And I think it would be worthwhile at some stage me circulating some of the papers that have been discussed to put some members' minds at rest. Hydrogen, big discussion, but going green is high up the list. Obviously, there were a couple of items that were ahead of it on the agenda, but the sincerity that was shown by colleagues from across different councils in some of the conversations we were having, I think is important. And as long as we join forces with other councils, I think we stand a very good chance of securing some funding out of central government for our needs. I just thought I would add that in.
No, that's a very good point, Ray. Right, I'm going to open. There aren't any other right to speak, so I'm going to open it up to the cabinet now, and I'll invite Peter Wharf.
Right, thank you, Spencer. 2 points. One is Hilary Jordan, the officer responsible for this, has very helpfully put on the chat line, but obviously that won't be available to the public necessarily, that supplementary planning documents can add detail or they can explain, but what they can't do is change in principle. So whilst they're useful, they have to be based on something that exists already, and they have to amplify rather than change. The second thing is, if at any time we were to make a change either to a supplementary planning document that didn't meet that requirement or make a change to the policy, we would be open to challenge, particularly from developers. Developers would then probably win the appeal. They'd be able to build what they liked, where they liked, without the conditions that we put in originally. So whilst it is very frustrating to have this length of time before you can develop policies, it's worth it, because if you try and do it any other way, it ends up costing you and you don't achieve what you want and you allow unfettered development. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, well said, Peter. Thank you. David Walsh, you've got your request to speak. Have you done that, or do you want to come back?
Well, no, I've just been made redundant by the leader and the deputy leader, so I'm going home now.
Right, colleagues, any other cabinet colleagues wish to comment on this important this important report? If not, can we agree the recommendations? With the Ray, you've got an amendment, haven't you?
Yes, I did, which was amendment 3.
And I've seconded your amendment. So, subject to the amendment, colleagues, can we agree the recommendations?
Very pleased to agree.
Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 13, dog-related public space protection order. Jill Haynes.
Thank you, Leader. That trips off the tongue lightly, doesn't it? This paper is a really long paper, and it's there because it's to rationalise all the district orders and align the approach across the Dorset Council area. The draft order looks to provide some generic restrictions across public open spaces and to add clarity and understanding along with appropriate signage and enforcement. A single dog-related PSPO should make it easier for residents and visitors to appreciate the provisions that are in force in the area. Only suggested provisions that were in the public consultation can be included for inclusion in the order, which is why some people who ask questions at the beginning might be wondering why we aren't looking at what their views were, but we had to do what was actually in the original consultation. The consultation has had an excellent level of participants with over 8,600 responses and included a very good representation of ages, dog owners, non-dog owners. 25 parish and town councils responded, along with some national organisations and Dorset Police and the Police and Crime Commissioner, who are statutory consultees. There were also relevant landowners who wished to have their say on it, and we'd like to say thank you very much for everybody who's involved in it, because it has helped us view the appropriate orders. In particular, I'd like to say thank you to our officer Mark Simons, who's our head of consultation engagement. This is a really big piece of work, and I think he's made an excellent job on it. And the fact that we've had that many people respond kind of is a tribute to the work that and the way that he put the consultation out. The paper has been through a Place and Resource Policy Committee, and I have got one amendment that I need to make, which is because there was an error in the way that the order has been drafted in the papers. So a submission has been received from Charmouth Parish Council requesting a change to the recommendations, and officers support the change as an error was made in drafting the orders. In effect, the change will move the proposed restriction from the East Beach to the West Beach, and that actually reflects the status quo, so we've got the East and West mixed up. The revised recommendation is to include West Beach as an exclusion area between the 1st of May and the 30th of September, with dogs exercised on leads at other times, off leads at other times, and East Beach to have no restrictions. That is the amendment I would like to put forward. The recommendations are at point 10 in the report and run from pages 198 to pages 205. So I'd really appreciate it if you took them on block. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. Can I have a seconder for Jill's amendment, please?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Laura. I don't see nothing in the chat box from other members. Oh, yes, there is. Daryl Turner.
Chairman, thank you. I just thought I'd mention when this came to the overview committee, not the policy committee, the overarching thoughts of the committee surrounded the extremely large and well-balanced responses from the consultation. 8,600 responses is actually phenomenal. Therefore, members felt the consultation results on the whole should be adhered to, and that was our main theme throughout the meeting. For noting, just following on from what Councillor Haynes just mentioned, The issue of early timed access to the beaches in the closed periods was raised at the scrutiny committee discussing the consultation prior to the launch of that consultation, and there was no appetite to add this to the consultation from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Dal. Really appreciate that.
Thank
Jill,
you.
do you want to come back?
Yes, I would like to say that it is a statutory requirement that we come back and review this within a 3-year period. And so some of the things that were mentioned in the questions, I think that we want to look at again in future, and possibly those early mornings, late evening type walking activity that people have mentioned, we might want to look at again in future. But at the moment, we are where we are. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. There is no other request to speak. So over to the Cabinet. Colleagues, any comments? If not, can we accept the recommendations with the amendment as proposed and seconded? Can we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 14, financial provision to the voluntary and community sector. And Jill Haynes.
It's me again, yes. It absolutely gives me great pleasure to present this, as it gives an opportunity to say publicly a really big thank you to all our voluntary and community organisations and the umbrella organisations that support them for the fantastic work that they've done during this COVID pandemic. This paper is in some ways a recognition of their need for a longer term stability in commissioning the services for a 5-year period rather than the annual grant that happens at present. However, by doing that, it means that we do take the recommendations to a key decision, as by giving them the security of 5 years, the decisions are over 500,000, which makes it a key decision. The paper also recognises the excellent value for money that these organisations provide, and the Council needs for them to flourish and to continue to provide the current level of funding going forward, despite the financial challenges that we are under, seems really important. There are 5 recommendations, and you will note that actually this report should have come to Cabinet probably last March, excuse me, but due to the COVID, there's been some delay, which has given us a delay in the way that the contracts will begin. So we're just not able to get those ready in time to procure them appropriately for next March. And so the contracts will all now begin on the 1st of October 2021. So the recommendation number 1 is for the continued provision of information, advice and guidance service for residents. And again, this will be for a 5-year period. Recommendation 2 is the continued provision of arts and culture, which I think is really important, and we sometimes don't take into account how much the arts and culture actually support people's mental health and well-being. Recommendation 3 is provision of support services to the local voluntary and community sector, and that is working with organisations as we do at the moment, like Dorset Community Action and Volunteer Services, Volunteer Bureau. I will get there in the end, and for them to all come together with the organisations that they represent. So this is actually a joining up of those organisations. It's really important because prior to COVID, a lot of them were continuing to work as individual organisations. And what we need to do is we all need to work in much closer partnership now. And then recommendation 4 is slightly different. We feel that we do need to support these a longer period of time, but we're obviously in the process of a very substantial review of our assets, and these museums come into that asset review. So at this point, we are actually just commissioning them for that 1-year period until we've had the asset review, and then we will be looking to see how we move forward. And finally, there are the discretionary and outcome-based fund, which will be introduced to replace all of the historic grants right across the Dorset Council area. I should say that this report has been thoroughly examined through the People and Health Overview Committee, and they were happy to support the recommendations going forward. So I'm pleased to take questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Jill. I don't see any right to request to speak from non-executive colleagues, in which case I've got a question from Laura Miller. Laura.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's not a question, it's an expression of support really for this, and to thank Councillor Haynes and the officers for the work that's gone into this, because I think we've seen, especially over the last couple of months, how important community resilience is and how we need to be working in partnership, and we need to be a part of that, and we need to be enabling this. So I just wanted to really add my support for this paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Any other colleagues? Andrew Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Very similar to Laura in echoing my appreciation and thanks bringing the paper to Cabinet, but also to the army of volunteers that we have across Dorset for the incredible response we have seen from them. Not just as a result of COVID, there have been tens of thousands of people volunteering across our county for a very many years now, and we're incredibly grateful for them. They do sterling work, particularly with the children's services, from early years all the way through to our care leavers. I've seen incredible actions and dedication from the voluntary sector, and my heartfelt thanks goes out to them.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Any other Cabinet colleague? If not, I would just like to compliment People and Health Overview Committee for their contribution. Always adds value to looking at where we're going with these sort of things. It helps an awful lot. So without further ado, we have a recommendation before us. Can we agree?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 15, planning for the future white paper, consultation response. David Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can first go back to Mark Roberts and his question, I wasn't swerving it. It's just the problem with this consultation document is that there are variables within it. Now, talking about the infrastructure levy that could be coming in place, that could be set nationally, locally. There are different variations, so it's very difficult to plan for the future. If I can thank Hilary Jordan and her team, who have been fantastic, not only doing the local plan and getting that on time, but responding to these consultations as well, which take a lot of time and a lot of consultation with me and others. So thank you, Leader. Cabinet, this paper is before you because the white paper, Planning for the Future, proposes radical changes to the current planning system of England, which will have significant impacts on Dorset, its communities and the council. It is important, therefore, to respond to the consultation in order to influence the outcome and ensure that the proposals do not adversely affect our area. In particular, as a consequence of the binding housing targets and reduction in democratic and community involvement in decision making. I'm not going to go through Dorset Council's response in detail. I will just pick up on some salient points. Because due to the concerns raised previously by members on this white paper, an extended 1 hour 45 minutes webinar took place on the 24th of September, mainly dedicated to the consultation document. It was an extended webinar to ensure there was enough time for all questions and debate. The recording of that webinar is still available to anyone that missed it or who just wants to recap. I have received very positive feedback from members cross-party on how useful they found the session. And more importantly, some members, within days of the consultation coming out, have sent me copies of their individual responses, which is fantastic. Because we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, members of the public and organisations have sent me their responses and copied in Dorset MPs. A century-old countryside charity, very active in Dorset, have sent me their views, or perhaps I should say reactions. Now, I have told all of these individuals and groups to send in their responses and hopefully support Dorset councils, which are now in the public domain from this meeting's papers. We do not want to add site-specific parochial comments to this paper. Dorset Council's response to the national consultation is looking at the bigger picture, the whole Dorset area, and rather than send one response of 500 pages, I would prefer 500 responses, or even 5,000 from all over Dorset, which is why, members, you were given a briefing note to help aid your discussions with your town and parish councils, community groups, neighbourhood plan groups, mother and toddler groups, anyone with a future in Dorset. You can assist them in submitting their response. Represent your local area in your own response. That is your chance to be parochial and write of how these proposals will impact your village, your parish, or your town. After the webinar, every Dorset councillor is now equipped with the background and information to write their own response to this public consultation. Because if these proposals are implemented, they will impact on every single one of your wards. If you need more help in submitting your individual response, come to me and I will help you. The closing date for this consultation is the 29th of October, so you have 3 weeks from now and had more than 4 weeks from the webinar when your briefing note. I am hoping that every one of your town and parish councils, with your guidance, will certainly want to pick up on the binding national housing targets and the removal of the chance to comment at outline planning application stage on allocated sites, reducing the ability of communities to input into proposals for their own local area and reducing local democracy. Every time that I'm in Westminster with a new communities group, I bang on at ministers that delays in house building are not due to the planning system. We local authorities do not build homes, we grant planning permissions. But as you have read in the consultation paper, in the last decade, 2.5 million houses were granted planning permission, but only 1.5 million were delivered. There are currently about 15,100 homes with planning permission or allocated for development across our own Dorset area. That thread runs through the responses that we have prepared because these proposals would have a huge impact on the future of Dorset and its communities. This is our opportunity, your opportunity, to have your say. It is your duty. That is why you were elected. You are the voice of your community. So how will it affect your village, your parish, your town? If the government white paper proposals are implemented, the changes would have significant impacts on the completion of our Dorset local plan. And the work programme would need to be revised yet again. There is significant risk to the progress of currently emerging local plans due to the uncertainty around the scale of these changes. The completion of a Dorset local plan is a very high priority for the council. But as you have read, the white paper proposes that the new style plans would take only 30 months to prepare. That this timescale would be mandatory and that they would all be adopted by the end of the Parliament by April 2024. This would require the necessary new legislation to be introduced very quickly, but the mandatory timescale would greatly restrict, if not erode, the amount of community engagement that will be possible in the preparation of the new plan. And members, whatever happens, we must ensure that the people and the democratic process stay at the heart of planning in Dorset. Leader, at this point, I would like to add a further recommendation, though I don't want to add comments to the Dorset Council's response, because I want everyone that has additional points to raise to submit them in their own response to this public consultation. I want everyone listening now that cares about Dorset to submit a response. And so, Leader, the additional recommendation would read, any minor changes to the white paper consultation response can be made under delegated powers by the portfolio holder for planning in consultation with the service manager for spatial planning. And with that, Cabinet, I commend this paper to you and propose the 10 recommendations with this final amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Before I open, there are some questions coming through. Can I just get a seconder for the amendment, please?
Happy to second.
Thank you very much, Ray. I've got Robin Cook. Robin. Where are you? I might have to come back to. Oh, here he is, Robin.
It's coming. I don't know what happened there. There's a lag.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman, and thank the portfolio holder for his concise detail of this paper. And I'd like to compliment, I think actually Portfolio Holders touched on a lot of the answers of my question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, David, because you know I like to be irritating. I'd like to compliment, first of all, everybody on the draft response. I have found it very, very helpful, particularly when dealing with and going forward, dealing with my parish councils and helping them in their responses. So that is a very good piece of work, and thank you for that. Notwithstanding that the white paper is from Whitehall, not Dorset, there seems to be no direct reference to additional pressure on developers to deliver, other than a mentioning the question 8 response. And I understand this was heralded a couple of years ago by central government as a proposed major change to planning law, but seems to have disappeared off the radar. And I think it was seen by many at the time as a very positive move to improve housing delivery. Are we able to add some more robust comment to promote this in the emerging government planning policies? Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Do you want to pick that question up, David?
Yep, I'm looking at that now. I'd like to bring in Hilary Jordan on that point.
Hilary?
Yes. Sorry,
Question 8.
having trouble to switch the camera on. Yes, I think we could certainly add that. The paper does, the white paper itself does make quite a few references to needing to pressurise developers more, but they're extremely vague. So I'm sure it would be fine for us to add that point, that there should be more clear pressure on them.
Yes, thank you for that, Hilary. I
Thank
think
you,
more
Hilary.
rigor.
If I can
needs
also
to
add
be
to
in there.
that, I mean, one of the problems we have here is developers don't like this consultation document either, which is why I'm trying to get responses from every sector, from developers, consultants, planners, everybody, because this doesn't advantage anyone. There are problems all the way through this, and we've got to work together. So no, this doesn't suit the developers, and I'm hoping that they're going to respond. The ones that I've spoken to are going to respond. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Robin?
Thank you. Thank
okay.
you very much, Chairman.
Shane Bartlett. Shane.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, referring to the webinar that we had, which was a really good webinar, but it was basically a technical response from the officers on the white paper consultation document. And could I just ask, and I'd like to come back on the answer, please, could I ask that while the webinar was very well attended, could I ask how many responses there were from members of the council?
That I've received, or questions that were
received?
received?
Attendance, Shane, do you?
The attendance was good,
on the webinar.
But how many responses from that webinar was received about the white paper?
There were questions. As I said, I've received personal responses from people on that webinar and helping them put their own responses together, and they've sent me those responses and they've sent them to the MPs as well. So it was effective because people have used it, and they've used as much so the briefing note. People have used that, and they've been putting their responses together from that.
Okay, but of the 82 members, how many have you had that have answered?
Answered what? There wasn't a question.
But have made those responses.
Can I suggest we take that away and give Shane a proper answer? I don't think speculating. Well, let's go take it away, David, and do a little bit of research as to how many colleagues did actually, you know, respond or put questions or clarity around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't go directly to you normally. They would come through the process through democratic services, I would have thought. So it's a good question. I don't think we're going to have, we're not in possession of the answer today, but I think we can take it away and get an answer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
certainly
Shane?
don't have one.
Okay.
Okay. David Took. David.
Thanks, Chairman. I really wanted to, in the end, support Robin Cook's point about developers. As I keep telling everyone who'll listen, we have a situation here in Alderholt where we have a 89 houses scheme which has gone nowhere for, I think, 10 years at least.
Yeah.
Developers are not developing, and the biggest problem we have is not planning permission being failed to be given, but developers actually not developing. And I think that point needs to be made quite strongly. I heard the response earlier, but I'm supporting, I think, what Robin Cook said.
Can I come in there, Leader? Thank you,
Yes,
David.
of course. Yeah.
I mean, it is very, very important. This is why I keep banging on to ministers about it. As I've said, there are 5,100 planning permissions or slots that are not being built in Dorset. It's ridiculous. But we keep asking that the government white paper, the planning white paper that was supposed to come forward, well, this did instead, was supposed to give us tools to encourage developers. There was even one that said, rather than them having 3 years to start the development, they would have 2 years. But then they added a caveat, unless there's a viability issue. And I've never known a development without a viability issue, so that didn't help. We need to work with government, and we are lobbying, because I don't want to force developers into doing things. I want to work with developers to deliver the right development that we want in Dorset. It's not us and them, and I refuse to fight with them. We need to work with them and government to deliver the housing numbers that we know we can deliver. But we need the developers to deliver it, to build it. We give the planning permissions, they need to build it.
Yep, fair comment. I've got a question from Paul Kimber.
Once again, thank you, Chair. I agree with that the pressure on developers is much needed. I mean, on Portland, we've got a half-built monstrosity in Castletown that just year after year lays half empty. That was, you know, I think it's our Cold War legacy. But the question I do ask, well, not ask, the point I made, and I agree, for once I agree with David. My worry is the democracy around this. You know, we've all seen our communities organise when they don't like a development, and we then sort of take it on board and start to try and see if we can deal with it. So it's that democracy side that I believe we really got to fight for. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Paul on that, actually, and I'm pretty sure David will as well. David.
Yeah, I do agree with that, and I want to ask a question. Paul, have you been to your parish council, your town council on Portland, and spoken to them? Because the impact on the democracy will impact all of them, the parish councils, town councils, all the community. So are you out there encouraging people to respond? Because that's what I want from you, Paul.
Thank you. Yes, I will be asking for that to go onto our planning committee. You've caught us in between two planning committees, so yes, hopefully that will be coming along. I've also told all my councillors my concern on this. Thank you.
Great, and use the briefing note, please. It's a very good piece.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Paul. Good response, David. David Took, did you want to come back? You seem to have disappeared, or was the question answered?
I think the question was largely answered, but what I wanted to do was, again, on developers, 5-year housing supply is one of the tests. The other test is deliverables.
Yeah.
And when developers don't deliver, that impacts upon future speculative plans being allowed to go forward, as far as I understand it. Can I get confirmation of that from David?
Good point, David.
Yeah, very much so. And you know, in Dorset, because of the lack of building, we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. We think Purbeck does with their local plan, but nowhere else in Dorset has one. So we are vulnerable to speculative developers. We need, I know people don't want development in their areas, but we need development, or we won't ever have a 5-year housing land supply. It's just our job to ensure that we get the right development for our area. But we need development. Without development, developers will just ride roughshod over us speculatively through appeal.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, I understand that.
I just wondered if part of me being cynical might say there may be an advantage to them in not building out everything as quickly as possible.
I get your point.
But I suggest that tentatively and without prejudice.
Of course you do. I understand.
Can I quickly say something, Leader?
Yes, of course.
When I was on North Dorset, cabinet portfolio holder there, each month we used to have a meeting with a different developer. It'd just be cabinet members and the developer. And we would ask the developer, are there any problems within development? Why are you not developing? Are there issues that we can help with, that we can work with government with? What can we do to help you develop? And there was never a reason why they weren't developing. We never received a single reason that we could help them with. So being cynical or whatever, people aren't delivering, they're not developing for whatever reason. We need to help government to help us help the developers develop it.
Yeah, I think the market has a lot to do with it as well.
Many things.
You know, there's a whole, as you said, there's a whole range of different things. I can't see any other requests to speak. So I'm going to open it up to the cabinet, David. Are there any comments from cabinet, or can we agree the document as set out with the amendment?
Chairman.
Oh, sorry. Who was that? Ray?
It is Ray, yes.
Yes, Ray.
Chairman, if I can just take 2 seconds. David, you produced an excellent webinar, which helped me tremendously understand what we're facing. And it's the responsibility of all councillors when they go to these webinars to pass it back to the local parish and town councils. And we need to get this message through loud and clear, not just the local town and parish council, but also to members of the public, because it affects them as well. So the webinars are so important for people to attend. And I've got to say, yes, it did go on for an hour and a half, but it was an hour and a half of very useful information that helped me present to our parish council so we can get on with our documents. And I understand you've now had an invite to come and talk to us at our next parish meeting, David. So hopefully you'll accept that.
I have, thank you.
Can I hear you, Laura?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just really to echo what Ray said and thank David because no video, sorry. And just to thank David because I did share the briefing note and talk to my parish councils about it, and they are galvanised and working on replies as we speak. So it was really handy. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much for that, Laura.
Thank you. If I can just pass on those thanks, because it's Hilary and her team have worked so hard on all of this. So I would like to praise them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. There are no other questions. Any other member of the cabinet wish to comment, or can we agree the recommendation subject to the amendment?
Agreed.
Can we agree? Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 16 now, Children, Young People and Families Plan 2020-2023. Andrew Parry.
Thank you, Leader. And just for clarification for the records, I'm Councillor Andrew Parry. I'm the Cabinet Member responsible for children, education, skills and early help. There are 2 recommendations in the report we're seeking Cabinet's agreement on today. To recommend the Children, Young People and Families Plan for 2022-23 for endorsement and adoption by full Council. To agree to receive an annual report of the Children, Young People and Families Plan 2022-23. The reason for the recommendation: the full Council is required to adopt a Children and Young People's Plan as part of the Council's policy framework by the 31st of March 2021. Dorset Council, working with its partners, the Strategic Alliance for Children and Young People, has developed a new 3-year strategy plan to improve long-term outcomes for children and young people. The Strategic Alliance for Children and Young People is a multi-agency partnership which includes partners from police, health, schools, early years settings, voluntary and community sector. But for me, it can all be summed up in these paragraphs from the report. We want our children to have the best start in life. We want our young people to thrive as they grow into independent young adults. Where children need our care, we want them to have the right support in the right place, and that to be in Dorset. And we want all our children and young people to experience the best education. The report goes on. So this is where the important work begins, as every one of us, our children, young people, their parents and carers, the people who deliver services and our wider community family come together to deliver this plan. Chairman, may I also take this opportunity to thank everyone involved in drafting and assisting in the implementation of this plan, and in particular our colleague Councillor Worf for agreeing to chair meetings of the Strategic Alliance, bringing together a genuine vision for partnership working, and to every stakeholder for embracing the bold principles and vision which has been set out. happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I note that this is an item that will go to full council as it's a policy item. I don't see any colleagues in the chat box, so I'll open it up to Cabinet. Colleagues, any comments on this report? Are we happy to accept the recommendation as set out?
Happy to agree.
Given that it's all going to go to the recommendation to full council.
Agreed.
Happy to agree.
Thank you very much. Go on to agenda item 17, which is a new standing item that we've put on the agenda, linking into our new overview and policy development items going to overview committees. I do know that one or two colleagues have had conversations with overview chairman, and I'd just like those that have done that just to explain what they are and who they are and what their particular items are. So I'll start with Jill Haynes.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I've got a couple of policy items that are coming through. And the first one we will be looking at will be our cultural policy or strategy. I've already spoken to Councillor Andrew Kirby, who chairs the People and Health Committee, about this matter. And I think he'll be looking to set up a working group. It's not something that they're going to be looking at straight away in the full committee, but they'll want to actually have some sort of discussions in a working group. And coming on a little bit later behind that, we'll also be looking to create a policy or strategy for our communities, but that's a little bit behind the cultural one. I've got those two coming through. Both of those will be going through People and Health.
Thank you very much, Jill. Peter Wharf.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. There are two EAPs, Executive Advisory Panels, that I have been chairing, and I made it clear, and we made it clear, that EAPs would complete their work and pass them over to the appropriate policy committees. One is the Recovery and Reset Executive Advisory Panel, which has had a very large number of meetings and has now produced a very comprehensive large report, which, whilst comprehensive, still is work in progress. We are just at the final stages of making sure that all the members have seen any final changes, and then when that happens in the next hopefully few days, I will pass it over to the chairs of the two policy committees, who have quite reasonably said that they'd like to review the report before deciding which committee should overview it through the next stages. And it might be one of the committees, it might be a joint committee, that's their decision. So that work is not finished, but it's finished the stage where it's now going to go on to the policy committee. And I've also finished chairing the EAP on IT, and that is also going to be moving to the policy committee shortly. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Peter. Graham Carr-Jones.
Chairman.
Graham.
Sorry, I'm lost. Sorry, Chairman.
You're coming in?
No, Chairman.
You've got nothing to add at the moment?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, all right, okay, fair enough. So there's just an example of the openness of stuff going from items going from cabinet asking the overview committees to have a look at stuff. And I think it's really important that we demonstrate that the new structure is up and running. Graham, you're back.
I beg your pardon, Chairman, because I've got three things coming to the meeting. I've got the private sector housing policy enforcement policy. I've got the housing allocations policy and the housing standards enforcement policy. I'm just a bit slow on the uptake this morning.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you very much, Graham. That's very helpful.
Cheers.
Right, we go on to agenda item 18. Ray, have you got anything to add? This is the Climate and Ecological Emergency Executive Advisory panel update. Anything to add from what you've said earlier?
I think I've said enough so far today, Leader. I would just like to point out, though, that when the consultation document does go out, which will be at the end of October, I would ask all members and all members of the general public that are listening today to take part in the consultation. It's a big money spend. and we need to make sure we get the support of the residents going forward. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. Agenda item 19, urgent items. There is one urgent item of business today, but it's an exempt item, so it's related to supporting Dorset children with additional needs. And there is a paper in the exempt part of the business this morning. So can I move to agenda item 20, which is exempt business, and ask somebody to move the recommendation to exempt?
Chairman, I will move the recommendation to move the exclusion of the press and the public for the following item in view of the likely disclosure of exempt information within the meaning of paragraph 3 and 4 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. And if this proposal is seconded and passed, the public and press will be asked to leave the meeting whilst this item of business is considered.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'll second the exclusion of public.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for members of public for attending our meeting today. I'm going to close this section of the meeting down, and the councillors involved with the exempt business will log back in so we can deal with the items before us. And for the benefit of those that are coming back in, we're going to have a 5-minute comfort break. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you to the public. Thank you.